on the Hawkeyes Sports Network from Learfield. This is the Fight for Iowa podcast, brought to you by Atlantic Coca-Cola Bottling Company, Cenex, Iowa's Corn Farmers, Green State Credit Union, Quick Star, and by University of Iowa Healthcare. This is the Fight for Iowa podcast. Here's the voice of the Hawkeyes, Gary Dolphin.
College football is a month and a few days out. The Iowa Hawkeyes start their training camp in less than 2 weeks. Preseason awards and watch lists are rolling off the press for the likes of seniors Jack Campbell at linebacker and cornerback Riley Moss. Linebackers Seth Benson and Justin Jacobs are highly thought of, and punter Torrey Taylor landed on the Ray Guy Award roll call. Offensively, the blockers soaked up a valuable year of experience and looked to build on a Citrus Bowl performance that saw the running game average 6 yards a carry. On this week's Fight for Iowa podcast, you'll hear from head coach Kirk Ferentz at the Big Ten Media Kickoff in Indianapolis, and we'll preview the Hawkeyes' Week 2 opponent, Iowa State, with Cyclones veteran play-by-play voice John Walters. Fight for Iowa is sponsored by Athletico, Shields, and Iowa Corn.
More of the Fight for Iowa podcast after this.
It's been a long day. Your schedule's tight. Can we just take care of dinner for you? Quick Star has take-home meals, not cheap flash frozen stuff. Made from scratch, fresh, never frozen. Great quality because we make it ourselves. Grab a meal now to heat and eat later. Great kitchen cravings meals like fettuccine alfredo with grilled chicken, meatloaf with mashed potatoes and gravy, roast turkey with dressing and mashed potatoes. I feel a meal, a great family meal coming on that you didn't even have to cook. Quick Star, we got you covered.
This is the Fight for Iowa podcast. Here's the voice of the Hawkeyes, Gary Dolphin.
The defending Big Ten West Division champion Iowa Hawkeyes start preparation in earnest for the upcoming football season when training camp starts in a few days. The players are ready to put their paws in the dirt and start hitting the guy across from them. There will be very little talk about last season, NIL, or the transfer portal, subject matter that's been prominent in the newspapers and over the airwaves. Kirk Ferentz is settling into his 24th year as the game's longest tenured coach and has concerns with the path that college football is taking.
And eager to see where it heads and, how we what direction we end up taking. But it's a great game. It was a big thing in 1980 when I went to the University of Pittsburgh as a grad assistant. It was big when I went to Iowa in 81. And if anything, it's just grown bigger. Certainly, that's it's always been big and is bigger now. But with that, I think, you just have to think about our players. You think about the voices that they hear, the things that they have to deal with, the hands that are on them, the noise that they're listening to, and most of all, I think the pressure. And that's certainly a concern I have as I think about our football team, and long have felt that way. I think sometimes we lose sight about, just how young our players are and just how recently they were maybe in the backyard catching a pass or out playing in the street, playing touch football. So, it goes quickly for those guys. Everybody that plays in the Big Ten typically is probably the best player on their high school team, or certainly one of their best. But all that being said, it's still a big jump when you go to college football, just like it is if they play beyond. And all that being said, I think, our focus at Iowa, at least during my 33 years, has been on development of our players and trying to help them grow and, prepare for their lives after their college experience. A small percentage will get an opportunity to play in the NFL. A much smaller percentage will have a career in the NFL, but for the most part, the reality is most players, their careers end when their eligibility expires. So that's really kind of the reality of what we do, and I think that's why it's so important when they're in college. They're doing more than just learning their plays or developing their skill set. And to me, the best part about football and college football is just learning to be part of a team and what that really means, and just having respect for other people and realizing there's a lot of other things that are bigger than you. And to me, that carries our players well as they move into their adult lives. Our message this year for our team in 2022 is the same it's ever been. Just want our guys to focus on the love of the game, love of the work that's involved, which is significant, and most importantly, the love of the people you're with. And, to me, that's the best part about sports, and certainly the best part about football. And if you do that, my experience is, the player ends up being a better player, but more importantly, a better person, and is better prepared to move on into adult life. And that's the ultimate reality for most of our players. A couple words about our team. It's like pretty much like every year we have a really good group of veteran players back. We had a good football team, as Commissioner Warren cited last year. So we've lost some good players too and have voids to fill. We've had a chance as coaches to watch the guys who we anticipate to move into those positions, working behind the scenes, if you will, or on the practice field an awful lot. And just excited to see where they all go, how they grow, how they develop, how they meet the challenges. Certainly a lot of excitement for everybody this time of year, fans and coaches as well, but also some anxiety in that you're never quite sure how a player is going to react when they come out of the tunnel in the swarm, 70,000 people there to cheer them on. Just never quite sure how they're going to go. But, we've seen growth and just excited to see what it looks like here as it unfolds starting next week. Defensively, real quickly, we lost 3 really quality players in the back end, Matt Hankins, Jack Kerner, and Dane Belton. 3 outstanding players up front, Zach Van Valkenburg. So, we've got some work to do in the back end, certainly. And then up front, I think collectively we've got a good group of guys that really grew last year, and hopefully they'll continue to grow and fill in those voids. We've got some veteran players, certainly, coming back at the linebacker position. Jack Campbell's here. Kayvon Merriweather in the back end. Riley Moss is one of our better players. So, those are some of the guys that we'll be leaning on to help the younger guys move forward. And then offensively, unlike the defense, or not unlike the defensive line, we were young last year. We had one of the best players in college football, Tyler Linderbaum, but overall we were a pretty young group. So we lose Tyler, but I think collectively we feel good about the group and anxious to see how they develop. We've got 2 quarterbacks that have won games for us and played well on the field, and we expect both of them. Anticipate they're both going to play better this year in Spencer Petras and Alex Padilla. And then the running back receiver room, both those groups are young. We've got a lot of young players in both of those, outside of Nico Regani, who's a veteran receiver, but the rest of the guys are really young in both positions. The Williams is at the running back position, and then Arlen Bruce, Keegan Johnson, just to name a couple receivers. So it'd be interesting to see how they develop here in year 2 for those guys and grow. And then the tight end position we feel good about with Sam Laporte is here with the group. And Luke Lachey is a really good football player as well. So, certainly we've got some work to do there and some growing to make and improvement to make, but we'll see how that goes out. Special teams, kind of the tale of 2 cities. We've got Torrey Taylor back as our punter for his 3rd season. Really unique young person, a really good football player. But we lost Caleb Shudak, an outstanding place kicker. So that competition's open right now, and I can say the same thing about the return game. We've got guys auditioning for that. So we're excited to start. We're excited to get back on the field with our players and see what August brings, and we'll know a little bit more about our team certainly at the end of the month.
The Hawkeye defense will be the catalyst, led by All-American cornerback Riley Moss. Iowa does have to replace 3 multiple-year starters in the back end, and Matt Hankins, Jack Kerner, and Dane Belton. Safety Kayvon Merriweather. Cornerbacks Jamari Harris, Terry Roberts, and Brendan Dez Fernandez, along with safeties Quinn Schulte, Cooper DeJean, and the heralded first-year freshman Xavier Wampa are the heir apparents. In All-American senior middle linebacker Jack Campbell, Ferentz has his biggest linebacker ever at 6'5", 246 pounds, who the coach says is an authentic, humble leader, is not about taking credit, but plays with great pride, desire, and smarts. The Hawkeyes start the schedule with South Dakota State Labor Day weekend and then host in-state rival Iowa State September 10th. We welcome veteran play-by-play announcer John Walters next for a sampler of this year's Cyclone team after this pause on Fight for Iowa.
More of the Fight for Iowa podcast after this.
Here in Iowa, corn is more than our livelihood. It's our way of life. We use it to feed our livestock, helping us raise healthy pigs, cows, and chickens. We use it to make ethanol, helping us power a prosperous, clean-burning future. We use it to nourish our families, helping us stay strong generation to generation. And the more we use it, the more it boosts our economy, helping elevate the lives of all Iowans. You might think Iowa grows corn, but the truth is, corn grows Iowa.
Expert care for sports injuries means getting back in the game sooner and stronger. I'm Dr. Brian Wolf, Director at University of Iowa Sports Medicine and Team Physician for the Iowa Hawkeyes. You should never play through pain. That's why our sports medicine experts are here for you with same day, next day, and evening appointments. For imaging, therapy, or surgery, Choose the team the Iowa Hawkeyes choose. Schedule a visit at uihc.org/sportsmedicine.
This is the Fight for Iowa podcast. Here's the voice of the Hawkeyes, Gary Dolphin.
Iowa State football has featured a prolific offense due in large part to quarterback Brock Purdy and running back Breece Hall. Add in tight ends Charlie Kolar and Chase Allen and leading receiver Xavier Hutchinson, and you have a ton of talent. All but Hutchinson have moved on, though, and the next recruited generation for head coach Matt Campbell and staff will be on display in Kinnick Stadium September 10th at 3 o'clock. Last year in Ames, the Hawkeyes and Cyclones were top 10 ranked teams for the first time when facing each other. 10th-ranked Iowa knocked off number 9 Iowa State 27-17, with the Hawkeye defense intercepting Purdy 3 times with a forced fumble for good measure, resulting in a scoop and score by linebacker Jack Campbell. In those 4 takeaways, Iowa scored 20 points. In attempting to keep the Cy-Hawk Trophy in Iowa City for a 7th consecutive year, Iowa will have to now deal with Purdy's successor in the athletic Hunter Deckers. The redshirt sophomore from Northwest Iowa will look for wideout Xavier Hutchinson first and then hand the ball off to any one of 2 or 3 running backs, starting with junior Jirel Brock from Quincy, who accounted for 62 yards of offense in last season's Cheez-It Bowl against Clemson. John Walters is closing in on 20 years as Iowa State's play-by-play voice. Walters says Brock and several freshman talents are waiting for their opportunity.
But there's 3 guys besides Jirel competing for that running back position, and that's going to be a by committee thing. I think you're going to see 3 or 4 different guys playing every Saturday. It's impossible to replace a guy like Breece Hall and expect the same production. Same goes with Brock Purdy at quarterback. You know, the 100 touchdown passes accounted, or 100 touchdowns accounted for in his career. That's impossible to replace. But Hunter Deckers, a young man from Haywarden, Iowa, West Sioux High School, left-hander. He's really excited about getting his chance. And when he played last year, including in the game against Iowa, he played well. And so, you know, I think he's a guy that can step in and do some good things. I don't know if he'll be as accurate as Brock, but he has a stronger arm. You can throw it deeper down the field, so you can stretch the field maybe a little bit more. And then he can also run with some physicality. He's a big, strong, physical kid. So he ran the ball very well when he got those opportunities last year. So I think the running game is going to be kind of a combination. Deckers, 4 running backs. It's not just going to be one guy like it was last year with Breece Hall. And then you mentioned Xavier Hutchinson, and led the Big 12 in receptions the last 2 seasons. First team All Big 12 2 years in a row. When he decided to come back for an extra year, that was a huge boom for the offense. And combine him with Jalen Knoll, who's a young guy that is really emerged last year as a freshman. And I think they have a pretty good receiving core. So I don't think they'll be as tight end heavy. You just can't possibly replace Kohler and Allen. Jared Russ, a guy from North Scott, is an All Big 12 player himself, and he's more of a fullback type. But, they'll still use 3 tight ends, some Dolph, but I can't imagine that they'll use 3 tight ends as much as they did the last couple seasons.
John, the offensive line was hurt by graduation. It had been an outstanding line. Joe Moore, offensive line finalist. That offensive line has been so good, but you've got some key people to replace her too. Now, Trevor Downing returns to anchor. That's a good place to start.
Yeah, and he moves to center, which I think the coaches feel like is his natural position. They feel like he'll be a really good center. And then Jared Hufford, who played tackle out of necessity, will move back inside. So I think inside, they feel really good about the 2 guards, Daryl Simmons and Jared Hufford, and then Downing at center. Outside, you've got some guys who have been in the program that, Jake Remsburg was hurt last year, but he's a good football player from Valley High School in West Des Moines. And then Tyler Green is about 6'9", and out of Scranton. And he's going to take over the tackle position. So our tackles, last year we were like TJ Otzelberger small ball with our offensive line. We were playing 5 guards. Now it's, okay, we have 2 guys that actually are tackles playing tackle. We have a center that's really a center playing center, and 2 guards that are really guards playing those positions. So I think it could be even a better offensive line this year. But the jury's still out. We'll see. It depends how quickly Miller and Remsburg assimilate those tackle spots. But I think interior-wise, Iowa State's really in a great spot.
Cyclones are looking to replace key starters defensively as well, in all conference performers, most notably linebacker Mike Rose, the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. 3, 4, 5 starters, at least guys with a lot of experience, do return. Guys that saw significant minutes last year. And let's start with the defensive end, Will McDonough. He's all conference. He is back, which is significant because I know he's a fiery competitor. He's a vocal leader.
Will's Iowa State's all-time leader in sacks already, and he comes back for his true senior season. And yeah, he should be dynamite off the edge. He's a little bit bigger, stronger, so he can play more of an every down situation. And he should be very good coming off the edge. I'm excited about Isaiah Lee up front, a kid from Chicago who's just a terrific kid at nose guard, plays with a big motor. He's not real big. He's 6 foot. I say not real big. He's 300 pounds, but at nose guard nowadays, that's not a giant. But there's some pieces there. The linebackers with O'Ryan Vance and Gary Vaughn returning. And then they added a transfer from Delaware, a guy named Colby Reeder, who's about as big as Mike Rose and might be able to step into Mike's shoes. He was an All-American FCS player at Delaware. So it'll be interesting to see how that front six, if you will, the way Iowa State plays it, develops over the course of the season.
John, I think it's safe to say more often than not in recent history, this series has come down to or turned on which team makes more plays on special teams. The Hawkeyes are looking for a new kicker. Caleb Shudeck has left. What about the Iowa State kicking game and then special teams in general?
Jury's out on Iowa State's kicking game because it's all young guys. Last year, Andrew Mevis emerged as the guy that did everything. He punted, he kicked off, he kicked field goals, and he was terrific. He's with the Jacksonville Jaguars now. And that's hard to replace because you're probably going to have 3 guys replacing one guy, and they're all young players. And so, Dolph, I don't know that I've ever seen a punter impact a game more than Taylor did last year in Ames. Absolutely, the MVP of that game was the punter. He changed field position over and over and over again. And you're right, in this series, it's field position and turnovers. And Iowa State's bugaboo and not being able to beat Iowa they've turned the ball over some, and Iowa just has not turned the ball over in this series. Plus, they played really well on special teams. And so we'll see what Iowa State can do on special teams. But I think when you look at this game this season, can Iowa State play closer to mistake-free? You're probably not going to, against that defense, play completely mistake-free, but can you get closer to mistake-free? And then can you force a turnover? I'd take a little of your luck of the Irish, Dolph. I mean, if you wouldn't mind sharing every once in a while a turnover with our guys, that would make my day, but you haven't turned it over once in 5 years.
That's an amazing stat, and the Hawkeyes hope to be the cleaner team again when they line up against the Cyclones for the 45th renewal of this acclaimed rivalry in the modern era. I'll have some final thoughts in a minute on Fight for Iowa.
More of the Fight for Iowa podcast after this.
Atlantic Coca-Cola Bottling Company is proud to support the local communities in which we live, work, and play. Every day, Atlantic Coca-Cola bottling trucks continue to help the food and beverage supply chain by delivering products to retail outlets and those restaurants providing carry-out and delivery services. We know Iowans are resilient, and together we are strong.
This is the Fight for Iowa podcast. Here's the voice of the Hawkeyes, Gary Dolphin.
The Iowa State football game is a sellout at Kinnick Stadium, as are Nevada, Michigan, Northwestern, and Wisconsin. 600 seats remain for the Nebraska game Thanksgiving weekend. 1,500 are available for the season opener with South Dakota State. Call 1-800-IA-HAWKS or log on to HawkeyeSports.com. Thanks again to Iowa State play-by-play voice John Walters for guesting on this week's Fight for Iowa. I'm Gary Dolphin. Go Hawks.
Hawkeye fans, remember to hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcast app. Once you become a Fight for Iowa podcast subscriber, you'll automatically receive the latest episodes of the Fight for Iowa podcast, the Hawkeyes Voice podcast, Hawk Talk replays, exclusive game day content, and more. The preceding has been a Learfield presentation on the Hawkeye Sports Network.